Good evening all and welcome. Tonight we're going to be diving into horrors from the workplace, so don't jump ship just yet, because some of these are actually quite terrifying, so stick around to the end for some seriously good spooks. I'd also like to extend a huge thanks to Papa Scare for joining us in tonight's video. Be sure to check him out, link in the description and at the end. But for now it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. When I started working my last job, it was for people who had assisted living homes, beautifully built to accommodate the elderly. Days before starting work at a newly built house, the company owner had me take some things over there one evening. It was autumn and growing dark earlier, with nighttime closing in pitch black, where there were no lighted areas. It was an area where new homes were being built near surrounding woods, with very few streetlights. Upon entering the new house, I went to find the place and was told to put the stuff down. I walked around admiring the beautiful new rooms and furniture, although something seemed off. I knew that I was fortunate to be getting the full-time position on my preferred shift working in this beautiful new house. Although I was satisfied, something in the atmosphere seemed very off. It wasn't the expectant feeling of being a bit nervous, working with different people, with most of whom I'd never met, or the feeling of emptiness of a place or property having been never occupied. The entire area where the homes were being built just felt off. Business at the new house began as it slowly filled with residents and more than enough work for one or two of them alone. Strange vibes from the house still were going strong. It wasn't until several months later that workers began to mention strange experiences they had. This didn't happen until some residents had passed away in the home, but I did not consider that as being the reason for the strange events. Not entirely anyway. The first weird thing that I heard was that a co-worker was telling me that she felt as though she was being smothered as she sat near a resident's bedside working the midnight shift. I will always remember the time that I was taking a break and making popcorn in the microwave. Some had burned. Fearing it would smell up the house, I took it to the garage that was conveniently attached to it. When I came back inside the house, the entire kitchen reeked with the scent of air freshener. There were plug-in air fresheners in other rooms of the house, but none in the kitchen at the time. The strong scent I was smelling was nothing like the other air fresheners, and they were not even the type that have the automatic sprays. I checked all over the house for any air freshener spray cans or cleaners that may have been a cause for the scent, but found nothing. All cleaners were in the garage, and the residents were all sitting quietly in the living room. Some incidents that were told to me were from two co-workers that experienced lights turning on and off without them touching them. One worker said that she had turned out the main light in the living room because it was bothering a resident's eye. After helping all of the residents to bed that night, she came back up from the hall only to find it was turned back on. She thought someone was in the house. A worker on the midnight shift mentioned that she had the lights on in the main part of the house. She had gone into another area of the house, and when coming back out she found the lights out and very dark. One evening after my shift, I was talking to one of my good co-workers over the phone as she was working at the house. She told me that she had heard something in the hall area near some of the bedrooms. To her surprise, she found one of the Christmas ornaments that hung on a doorknob moving all on its own. It was repeatedly lifting out and hitting the door in a quick, timely manner, creating continual knocking. The ornament was very light, made of felt in Christmas colors with small bells lined down the middle and front. There was also a small brown felt Christmas tree on the bottom of the front. All of the bedroom doors had one of these kind of ornaments hanging from the outer doorknobs to decorate for Christmas. What creeped me out was the methodical, rhythmic way it was knocking, as if something was saying hello. She took a video on it on her phone, and I asked her what she thought about it. She said she didn't know what to think. She wasn't one to believe in ghosts. I thought that maybe she was trying to play a funny prank on me. I tried to use a fan to blow the ornament and see if I could get it to move like it had been before. The fan just made it blow in all directions no matter what speed I set, or where the fan was placed. It seemed to me that if a string was used to make it move, the ornament could have been much heavier for a quick pull of gravity to make that precise knocking. Some months later, a new employee started working the midnight shift and was doing room checks. When approaching the door that once had the moving Christmas ornament, she heard the little elderly resident inside speaking with someone that sounded like another elderly lady. This was when all the other residents were soundly sleeping in their own rooms. Some nights later, I was told that the same resident came out of that room in hysterics one night, fearing that demons would harm her. I heard of this happening at least twice. This was entirely out of character for her. Demons were never something she'd speak of. Perhaps she was reacting to something in that room. Years later, the room became open for another occupant. Another little lady came to stay. When she was being assisted to her room for bedtime every night, she always stood in the doorway making the sign of the cross and would say, "Bless the room." This I know to be true. I had seen her do it. No one had told her the story of it. It was as though she knew that something wasn't quite right with it. One afternoon, a worker came in for her shift, and the company owner also came in around the same time, needing some help, taking some stuff down to the basement. I stayed over my shift to help. We braced the basement door, which was designed to swing shut and automatically lock. My co-worker bumped a tall, thick drinking glass off the kitchen counter. It hit the hard, tile floor, sliding towards the open basement door, and down the stairs it went. I could hear it hitting every step before landing at the bottom. It was a tall stairwell, and I dreaded cleaning broken glass. I went to retrieve it, not seeing any broken glass on the steps. When I picked up the glass, I could find no breaks, cracks, or chips upon examining it though, when I had been expecting to find it damaged in at least some way. There was also a kind of chaplain that would come to the house and tell inspirational stories to the residents. He would sing and play music to them and have them sing along. They loved him. I briefly mentioned to him about paranormal things happening around the house, and I asked him if he could bless the house, and he said a nice prayer. One day when I was at work, a frequent visitor called me over to her and shockingly told me that something had just whispered her name in her ear. Another day, when she was visiting, she mentioned feeling an oppressive, threatening feeling as she went through her mother's clothes in the closet. She said that she was going to bring in some holy water and bless the house. She and I were in agreement on never talking about anything we discussed about the house. One day not too long after, she brought in the holy water and we walked through the house in prayer. She marked each door in the sign of the cross with holy water, and the paranormal activity seemed to die away after that for a bit. One night, a co-worker working the midnight shift was putting up Christmas decorations on the fireplace mantle. She took pictures with her phone camera of how it looked when she was done. A picture I had her send to my phone shows eerie bluish rays near the fireplace mantle by the ornaments and by the Christmas tree. She told me she had done a video in the room and it showed some really crazy stuff, but she deleted it. It was fun to kid co-workers and put out Christmas ornaments like that one moving on its own, so I don't know what it was with the Christmas decorations, but something seemed strangely attached to them. The house owner apparently bought many of them at different yard sales. I had also worked with two good co-workers, each in different years, who noticed the strange feeling from the house and surrounding area. We often wondered and talked about possible causes of it. The final creepy experience that I recall happened one afternoon when I stayed after my shift and was talking with a co-worker and a visitor in the kitchen. We were talking about some of the weird things about the house, and she was sharing some of her own paranormal experiences that had happened in her own life. Right in the middle of conversation, 3 loud, distinct knocks could be heard coming from a nearby bathroom that was in plain view. We all heard it. None of us recalled seeing anyone go in there, and residents would have needed assistance walking anyway. We opened the bathroom door to find it dark and empty. Make of these experiences what you will, but I guarantee you that they are all true.
I'm a 16-year-old female, working as a customer care manager on front of house for McDonald's. Now, where I am from, when you are front of house, you are required to wear a light, striped top, a yellow neck scarf, and a pencil skirt to just below the knee, which has a small split up the back. I always buttoned my shirt right up to the top, so I always looked very modest, and I would never say a McDonald's uniform is attractive. Anyway, when I worked at McDonald's, I always put my all into everything I did. So I knew tills, drive-through, drinks, serving, etc. I have also always been someone that will happily have a conversation with someone to make their experience more enjoyable, and hopefully make them want to come back. I was working on tills when the creeper came through the door. He was a tall, blonde bodybuilder. At least 50 though. He came to the till and ordered. Didn't look very happy, so I asked the obvious questions. How was your day, etc. He made small talk and we got chatting about both of our days. After that he tells me, "It's nice to see someone smile around here. Everyone else is grumpy." Nice enough compliment. I was used to it. He was right, not many people here enjoyed this job. He starts coming in once a week, on a Wednesday morning. Each morning he would come in, he would have a chat. If I was on the floor, front of house, we would sit and chat at a table, and my managers were fine with this, as they knew it made each customer experience unique. We got to know each other's names. His name was Michael. I started college on a Wednesday and Thursday, and worked at McDonald's part-time. So my shifts changed. I worked Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays, instead of Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and sometimes extra days if they needed me. Michael started coming into McDonald's every day to find when I was working. First red flag, but I figured he's just lonely and needs someone to talk to. Anyway, he worked out my shift pattern and came in on Tuesday instead, after asking me why I wasn't on Wednesdays because he missed our chats. He'd do this thing where he would let someone else go in front of him if it meant that he could come to my till instead. He would wait to one side to get served by me. Odd, but I didn't think too much of it. Just thought he was a man that liked to be served by someone with a smile and had taken a liking to me. Again, we chatted when he came in. This is where it got a bit more weird. We were sat down, talking, and he decided to really open up to me. He told me how him and his wife were going through a messy divorce. He started going into the details of why. He had punched his son. Now, this guy was big. Like, he looked like a bodybuilder. I can't remember exactly what had happened, but he had ended up smacking his wife too, I think. And here he was, telling me about it. I'm no counselor after all. After proceeding to tell me how big his house was, probably to try and grip my attention, he started telling me how he was living in the basement of the house that he owned, and it wasn't fair. I'm going to hit her again if this carries on. Apparently the wife and son wanted him out, and they were going to have it, and not pay him for blah blah blah. He wasn't letting that happen. His son won't talk to him, blah blah blah. He started asking me for advice, a 16-year-old girl. I didn't really know what to say, so I just sort of said, everything happens for a reason, I suppose. And as I went to get up, he asked me to sit back down. Now, I had already been sat for near on half an hour, and I know I said my managers don't mind, but that's pushing it a little bit. So I told him I really had to go. He carried on trying to get me to sit back down, but let me go in the end. Now this may seem totally unrelated, but trust me, it will make sense later on. In McDonald's, you have the sauce pumps, right? Well, they are connected to a big bag of sauce which has a popper in the top of it. You basically pop the tube into the popper on the bag. But this thing is fiddly. It can take me about 10 minutes just to get it connected. Then, to put the heavy bag in the holder on the side is another 5 minutes. It's a nightmare. Right, back to the story. The sauce had run out, and I had to fiddle about getting it in. Where the sauce dispenser is, right opposite from where Michael always sits. I could feel eyes burning into my back as I did this, and any time I'd turn round, he would be looking at me and just smile. It made me feel a fair bit uncomfortable. But hey ho, it's my job, and you deal with this stuff all the time. Trust me, he's not the first person I've had perving at my bum. He came back a few more times, and each time I felt more and more uneasy. He started being a bit more personal, telling me he thought I was a pretty young girl and we should meet up for coffee at some point, and I politely declined. Michael then said this, "Can I ask you something personal?" Depends what it is. I can't promise I will answer." "Are you a virgin?" "I'm not answering that." "What size are your boobs?" "I have a boyfriend and I'm not comfy answering these questions." "Do you love your boyfriend? Would you leave your boyfriend for me?" "My boyfriend is behind the counter. I don't think he will be very happy with you asking me questions like that." "Just make sure he treats you right. You are a lovely girl. Anyway, I won't be coming back here for a while. So, can I have your number?" I don't think my boyfriend would be happy with that either. After that, I go to the back room to calm myself, as this was very unnerving for me. He was an older guy, being very strange and asking super inappropriate questions of me. He knew my age, as I had told him previously. The day continued. He had left. I finished and went home. When I woke up the next morning, I had a message on WhatsApp, a message on Facebook, and a friend request on there, and an Instagram follow. It was Michael. I don't know how, but he had found all my personal accounts just through my first name. The only way I can think of him finding it out is by asking a colleague what my surname is and getting my number off one of them. Maybe he was friendly with one of the other workers and got my number from them. I don't know. He had messaged me saying how he needed to see more of my pictures. My Facebook and Insta are set to private, but he saw the main pictures of them and my WhatsApp photo. He had sent another message about how he loved looking at my ass when I was bent over, crawling on the floor to fix the sauce bags. I don't know if my split in the skirt was revealing, but I don't think it was. Saying all the things he would love to do to me. At that point, I noped out and blocked him on everything. I still get messages, not sexual though, from other accounts he has made, wishing me a Merry Christmas, etc. Even though he should have gotten the gist of me not wanting to talk to him. Luckily for me, I moved away a week or so after that happened. So Michael, let's not meet again.
My sister, who passed away in October, had an ex-husband called Todd. He's 6 foot tall, and while I'm 4'9", I'm hardly very intimidating. But due to who I know, I can scare creepers pretty well. But Todd is a whole nother class of creepy. Now, I did not know he had a dummy account on Facebook, and I was talking to friends about attending an anime con alone. My fiancé Rick backed out and said he'd pick me up for dinner. On the day of the con, I was dropped off with my panel gear and was set to meet at the hotel with 2 friends, Danny, a girlfriend, and Jade. They let me keep my stuff in the hotel room so that I could enjoy the con, get my badge and prepare for 2 panels that I was running, Japanese mythology and fandom pride. I was excited but also felt weirded out. I did not own a smartphone back then, or would have gotten texts from my sister. Apparently, the messages I did not get informed me that Todd and his new girlfriend were at the convention, and he was looking for me. So around 9 PM, I finished my first panel, and Jade treated me to some food. If you call going to 7-Eleven for hot dogs food. We were enjoying it in the lobby when Todd, who I didn't even recognize, came over. He was hanging on the side of a seat, and he was drunk as hell. I asked what the hell he was doing there, and he asked me why I wasn't home minding my fiancée like a good girlfriend. I was a little surprised by that, and went back to Jade and Danny's room to call Rick. Sure enough, Rick said he was coming to the hotel and to wait in the room. We did, and I heard something I never wanted to hear coming from the hall. Someone shouted, "He has a knife!" Danny looked out the door and saw Todd coming down the hall yelling for me. I went pale and wanted to hide in the bathroom. I felt sick. Danny closed and locked the door, hoping Todd didn't see us. Todd was caught, but it was so dim in the halls of the hotel no one could tell. He was banned for the con, thank goodness. Rick stayed with me all night when he arrived and helped me with the last panel. We decided to stop going to conventions for a year, and my sister and mum opted to extend the no contact order onto Rick and I against Todd. We have not seen Todd in 3 years and hope to never do so again.
This happened around 2015 when I was working in a cute, fancy little boutique hotel. It had 6 substantial rooms and often had big names stay. I worked, doing a bit of everything. Guest assistance, reception, service in the restaurant, drinks. Whatever was needed, really. One of the line cooks was from Eastern Europe, was in about his mid-40s and worked full-time. He was overly friendly with me, to the point of making me feel uncomfortable, commenting on how I looked, staring too long, standing too close, touching me whenever opportunity arose, just on the arms, back, shoulder, with a palm. Nothing overly outrageous, but there was a creepy feel about it. To give you a picture, I'm 5'2" and slight build. This guy was tall, about 6'5", and had a broad, strong build. He looked like he worked out. English was his second language, but he spoke it fluently. Often he would stand close to me or stand between me and my exit and give me compliments, staring at my chest and saying,
"Wow, you're good. Guys must love you."
and
"You're so beautiful.
and
I love your legs in the uniform. You should always wear a skirt with those legs."
yada yada, etc., making me feel super queasy. He was also a born-again Christian and loved to recite random scriptures to me because he knew I grew up Catholic and figured for some reason I would appreciate it. I did let him know I wasn't religious, and he volunteered that he has only recently become a born-again Christian. I asked him what made him turn to the Lord, and really wish I hadn't. His response,
It doesn't matter what you have done in the past. No matter what. When you become born again, you get a clean slate and forgiveness.
he had the creepiest smile when he said this, and was staring at me with his head lowered, if you can get that sinister image I mean. It was full on weird. This guy has done some messed up stuff. I have zero evidence of this, other than he gave those vibes. Anyways, I went on a holiday for a few weeks, and on my first shift back, I'm setting up the restaurant for the evening dinner, and he shows up to work his shift. He comes up behind me, and with his mouth and nose against the edge of my neck, he breathed me in. I could feel his warm, icky breath. He smelled and inhaled me and said,
I've missed your smell."
It was gross. I just gave a weird, awkward smile and ushered away. I went down to the office to take a second to chill. My GM was in there at the time and he asked me what was up. I told him what happened, but said it wasn't a big deal, that I was fine and just wanted a second to chill. He was like, "Hell no. and went up to the kitchen and fired this guy on the spot. He came back and told me I had nothing more to worry about. That was it. Never saw him again. I did kind of fear him trying to get back at me, but nope. That was a really good shift that night. It felt great to see my boss stick up for me like that.
I'm going to take you back a few years to when I was working at McDonald's. For context at the time, I was a 16-year-old female. Now at the McDonald's I worked at, when you are on headset, you answer people at the drive-thru. You are normally required to be at the first window to also take payment. My job position was customer care manager at the time, so my job was to be on the front desk, but 99% of the time, they required me to be behind tills. So I was having a normal day, working a long shift, but having a normal work day. I happened to be on headset, and first window that day too. My headset buzzes, letting me know there's someone at my drive-thru lane. I go through to the first window to answer my customer, and this is how the conversation ensued. "Hello, welcome to McDonald's, what can I get you?" "Oh wow, you got a beautiful voice." His voice was grunty and husky sounding, not off-putting. We have all sorts of customers come through McDonald's every day, so it didn't give me the creeps or anything. "Thank you, sir, how very flattering. What can I get you?" "I haven't decided yet." There's a long pause here. "Can I come to the first window to decide? I want to see who I'm talking to." Now we weren't very busy at this point. The creeper hadn't actually creeped me out. I mean, all he'd done was pay me a compliment, and we quite often had people complaining that they preferred face-to-face contact, so this certainly wasn't out of the blue or unusual. "Yeah, sure sir, that's fine." "Wow, you're as beautiful as you sound." "Thank you sir, have you decided what you're going to order?" "Are you an option?" I laughed nervously at this. It was my first job, and I wasn't the rude kind of person where someone was paying me a compliment. I must also point out this guy must have been in at least his 60s. I remember he had one lazy eye that looked to the left, painfully awful teeth, and patchy dark brown hair. At this point, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but was still more than willing to take his order. "I'll have a cheeseburger." "Okay sir, that'll be 99p. Are you paying cash or card?" Without answering my question, he started asking me where I'm from, how old I was, etc. But it wasn't until his last question that I got super weirded out. "What time do you finish work?" 7:30, why? I didn't actually finish at 7:30, but 7:30 was the first number that came into my head when I blurted it out. I finished at 8 and would probably do some overtime too, but I wasn't about to let him know that. "I can meet you if you want. I can pick you up outside and we can go somewhere." All the while he's saying this, he has this horrendous grin on his face and keeps winking at me. "I'm really sorry, sir. I'm not allowed to meet customers outside of work. It's against employee policy." This was utter bull, but I needed him to leave me alone, and he carries on being insistent, but not getting the picture, and I cut the conversation short. "Anyway, sir, sorry to be rude, but can I have the 99p for your cheeseburger?" "Ah, yes, sorry. See you at 7:30. Off he drove to the next window, and I was gobsmacked. I'd already said I wasn't going to see him. I was a little bit shocked, but was not going over there to give him the satisfaction of talking to me again. My coworker came to me and said, "Ew, that guy had a major crush on you. I wanted your number, but I didn't give it to him. He's old enough to be your dad, if not older." Anyway, I explained exactly what happened and how uncomfortable it made me. 7:30 came around and my coworker spooked. The creeper was actually waiting in the car park for me, just like he said he would. He sat halfway down the car park, and you could see him just staring in. Our car park wasn't very big. It only had 4 rows of parking spaces, so he wasn't that far away, and would have clocked me the minute I walked out the door. At this point, I'm freaking out, and head to the back of the store where hopefully he can't see me. I had to stay in the back of the store for 40 minutes before we knew it was safe to come out. Fast forward a week and Creeper is back on drive-thru, and guess who's back on headset at window 1? Me. I heard his voice and recognized it straight away. I was hoping I'd hear your voice again. Why didn't you meet me the other day? 1 second, sir. I'll be with you in 1 second. I immediately handed my headset to my manager and gave him a quick briefing of the situation. He gladly took the headset and dealt with the customer from start to finish. When my manager came back to me to let me know he'd gone, he said the creeper had been asking my name, my address, and my surname. My manager said he was the most creepiest guy he'd ever met, and I was never to have anything to do with him again. If he came back to work while I was there afterwards, my manager would have to head me to the back room while he dealt with him. He still asked about me every time. So to the creepy McDonald's guy, let's never meet again.
In 2018, I worked at a popular makeup store. It was situated in a very popular, busy mall, the biggest one in our city. My manager and I were on the late shift this weekend and were finishing at 9 p.m. Very important to mention, during that time there were a number of almost abduction cases in that mall. None of them were successful and kids were mainly targeted. I'm in my early 20s but could pass for 16. At around 8 p.m. our store is absolutely dead, and my manager and I are both tired and bored. I go to stand in my usual spot, the entrance of our store. I usually smile at and greet customers walking by just to pass time and to keep myself distracted. Directly opposite our store there is a small stall where funny and funky t-shirts are sold. It has shelves with huge gaps between them so I can easily see people on the other side of the store. While I'm standing at our store entrance, I see a male through the shelves staring at me. He was white, probably in his mid-30s, tallish, extremely disheveled appearance. His shirt was grey and had black greasy looking stains on it. His hair was longish, tangled, knotted and unkempt. He also had a white sling bag that resembled a mini sack. He was holding it oddly, gripping and scrunching the material of it and not the actual strap of it. He looked very out of place. I brushed it off at first and just avoided looking at him. 5 minutes later, I see him staring at me, completely fixated. At this point, I'm kind of creeped out, so I go back inside the store to tell my manager. And she says, it's okay. He's probably just being a weirdo, and there are security guards in the mall. I say okay and decide to stay within the store, trying to occupy myself with cleaning counters. 10 minutes later, I've forgotten about this guy, and I'm back at the door. I look at the stall again and the guy is still there. However, this time his body is facing me, but he's looking downwards at something he's holding. I look closer and he has a camera in his hand. It's positioned dead center of his stomach, as to keep it out of sight, focusing on me, and I'm standing there confused and panicked. Before I can even move, the flash from his camera goes off, and now I am absolutely terrified. The flash also seemed to shock him because he was startled by it and sort of leaped backwards when he saw it go off. As soon as it did, he looked straight at me and took off running. I was now shaking and ran back inside to tell my manager, but she wasn't very helpful. She told me not to stress about it and try to forget it. Why was he taking pictures of me? And why did he run? And what else was on the camera? I ended up resigning not long after. We had a few more creepy encounters that may very well be connected to that man, but I'll never really know.
I work in a store in the mall in a fairly nice area. I work right by the main doorway, which people come in and out of all day, unsurprisingly, and people hang out in the vestibule area between the outside and inside doors waiting for the bus to come. I usually work alone at night, lock up and leave through the same area, walk to my car and go home. 2 days ago, I end up working a morning shift and get to leave at 4 p.m. while it's still light out. Mind you, I'm a 22-year-old slim blonde girl and usually get mistaken for a 13-year-old. This day, I was wearing a pink sweatshirt, pink leggings, and my hair was in a ponytail, so I guess people could mistake me as young. Otherwise, normal day, whatever. I'm walking towards the vestibule, and when I push open the first set of doors, I always check if there's someone behind me to see if I should hold the door open for them because I don't want to seem rude. So I see an Asian guy, tan jacket, khakis, casually walking a good distance behind me. I don't want him to try and hurry up, so I hold the door open with my foot for him to walk through while I check my phone. He walks through the door, grabs my arm and says, "Come with me. I know what you stole." He's grabbing my arm pretty hard and is pulling me. Mind you, there are two women on the opposite side of the vestibule and a guy standing maybe 3 feet away, and I'm making eye contact directly with this guy with a "please help me" kind of look. The Asian guy continues saying, "Come with me," and is partway through the door to the outside, and I'm keeping my distance, trying to keep my arm close to my body and pull back. I think I mumbled something like, "I don't want to." I was so confused and couldn't even comprehend what I was doing. I thought for a second, is he joking? Does he think I'm someone else, or is he messing with me? Is he mentally ill? And if I pull back enough, is he gonna let go and casually walk out the door into his car and drive off? Me and the dude that were just standing there the whole time just had our jaws dropped looking at each other, just trying to communicate what the hell that was. He thought the same thing. He ended up walking me to my car, telling me that I needed to report it. I gave him a big hug and thanked him and got into my car, called my mom, then security, and talked to the security and the police and spoke to a detective, the whole nine. Apparently this isn't the first time a tall Asian guy is acting weird. A guy, probably the same one, apparently harasses juvenile girls at the mall frequently and isn't even supposed to be there. Security showed me some pictures of an Asian guy that they suspected and caught the whole thing on camera. He apparently walked in only 15 minutes before this happened. I'm still kind of shaken. I'm putting in my 2 weeks on Monday.
I worked in the complimentary breakfast area in a hotel for about a year. Our job was to basically just stand around the food and answer any dietary questions guests had. We were also supposed to talk to the guests, get to know them and make them feel at home. That day, there was a firefighters convention downtown in our city. The restaurant was full of them. They were all super nice, but there was one who was a little different. He was about 6'4". I'm thinking about 300 pounds, but it was all muscle. He was one of the biggest people I've ever seen in person. He walked down with a friend and I greeted them. He said hello with an extremely deep voice. In fact, it startled me. I jumped and he said,
"Oh, did I scare you?"
I said laughing, "I honestly just wasn't expecting your voice to be that deep." He chuckled. He went on to look around the food area. He reached for something and spilled some cereal. He looked back and apologized, asking if I was going to get him for making a mess. I jokingly said, "We're really serious around here, so you better clean it up before we charge you for damages." He laughed. He got his food and then came over to talk. Here's how the conversation went.
"You're pretty funny, you know."
I'm usually not this friendly in the morning, so you caught me on a good day.
Let me ask, how old are you?
The dreaded question that clearly indicates where the conversation is going. I'm 21.
Great. The reason I ask is because a couple of buddies and I are having a party down at...
Insert expensive boutique hotel.
And I was wondering if you wanted to come through. You can bring a couple of girlfriends.
Actually, I can't. I'm going out of the country in a few days and I haven't packed yet. Which was true, but I would have said no anyway.
Oh, I love traveling. Where are you going?
I'm going to Ireland, Spain, and Italy.
That's amazing. I went to Argentina. It was beautiful. You know, since we both love to travel, we should be travel buddies.
Now, I was thinking, Strange phrasing, but maybe he just means we'll both continue to travel, but separately? I don't know. I love giving the benefit of the doubt to people who don't deserve it. Yeah, sure. He then reaches out his hand for a handshake.
Promise?
I hesitantly shake his hand. Yep, I promise I will continue traveling. This whole time he's been very jokey and light-hearted, but suddenly his demeanor changed. He set down his plate and started frowning.
Listen, you're going to give me your phone number. And you're going to keep your promise. Don't tell me no.
He got closer, pinning me between himself and the counter. He talked quieter.
And if you're thinking about it, you better have a good excuse.
My anxiety was on 10. Thankfully, I happened to be by the exit door. I slid from between him and the counter and said, on my way out, "I'll have a great excuse," and ran to the kitchen and never came back out.
I used to work tables in a restaurant. One day this guy I've never interacted with before comes to me and hands me a framed picture smiling nervously. I took it. It's a picture of me at the staff table. I was done eating and staring at nothing, probably thinking about something deep and clever. I looked at the guy, and he explains timidly that he found me so pretty that he took a picture and framed it so that I could see how pretty I was and to hold on to it forever. Sweet gesture, but kind of creepy. 5 seconds later, the manager walks by, hears the story, bursts out laughing and decides this is perfect, and hangs up the frame in the back, on the wall, next to the work schedules, in a place where everyone that works here looks at practically every day. He thought it was hilarious. Everyone had a laugh, then we kind of forgot about it. The picture became part of the wall. It's been 8 years since I've worked there. The staff changed, the managers changed over the years. Everyone I knew changed jobs and everything. But my best work friend still remains. You know, the one person that could probably do another job better for her, but stays in this place out of pure habit, really. The one person that will always be there and still work there, probably 20 years after you moved on. She decided to keep the picture. She told the new managers that the girl on the wall was a waitress that worked here and died in an accident, and that the whole staff decided to frame her picture and honor her or whatever to keep her memory alive because she loved this place so much. You know, you get it. Well, 8 years later, when I occasionally visit the restaurant to say hello to my friend, I have a quick glance above the schedules, and the picture is still there. I wonder if the workers see me and do a double take, that the ghost girl has come back to the restaurant.
I live in a small county on the northernmost tip of Kentucky, one of the smaller communities. My girlfriend works at a country restaurant, basically catered to truckers, bikers, and farmers. She is in her young 20s, along with several other waitresses there. My aunt works there too. She comes in later. There had been a lot of reports and incidents involving an out-of-towner, Midwestern accent I think, exhibiting very strange behavior when he visits. His appearance is off-putting. He apparently has a very mean, scary-looking face, like the worst kind of meth-ravaged skeletal face, and smells of something sick. It has been described to smell like rotten fruit or chicken. Nothing about him is pleasant, and he barely speaks, other than the few shocking things he has said. It started innocently enough, with him asking the young waitresses for foot rubs and telling them he's all clogged up. It later got worse, where he would ask the waitresses to take his diabetic tests for him, and he even tried to spear a waitress's hand with the needle of a blood sugar test. He never got kicked out. The family of 3 female generations and sisters owned the eatery, and it is cliquish and seems to discourage complaints. It's old Kentucky, if you know what I mean. For whatever reason, the waitresses did not report the incident. He has not come back. I stayed outside of the diner for a while last week, sitting on the hood with my friend. We saw his Civic pass several times. He never pulled into the diner, other husbands and boyfriends have confronted him, or tried to. But apparently, he stays in his car and drives off when people try to approach. One of them says he got the plates and reported them. That is the most recent tidbit about him, that the sheriff knows about him and might have deputies placed near the diner. His car has been so deep into residential property, places it should have no earthly business being, and strange places that make no sense. For example, the owner of a small animal shelter reported seeing his vehicle parked across the road for several hours a day. Every time he exited the building, the car sped off. Another person saw his car at the dead end of her gravel road, outside a neighbor's driveway. These are at least an acre apart. The neighbor was not home, and the car was there off and on during the day. This is where things get creepy. Some of this is secondhand. Apparently, this week her manager saw a man walking on their property, mostly out in the woods, which many people often share as property. Some have seen him exiting the woods and private property of their own. We took all this with a grain of salt until my aunt saw a man pacing the ridge of a large hill that separates two properties, standing with his back turned watching houses. She lives about a mile from the diner. She said he would stand for long periods of time and watch the house adjacent to her, kneeling by a tree. The only reason she could see him is due to the snow at night and the hill he is placed on, which is between her and her neighbor's house, separated by a couple of football fields' length of land. He seems to flee males or not place himself in their path, because it is extremely brave to haunt property that you don't own, in a place where most houses have several guns. We are all scared he is going to do something. Some of this could legally be considered as stalking, right? He seems to be driving a red Honda Civic. Nothing particularly stands out about the car, except that not many, if any, own one here. Dodge Dakotas and Ford trucks are the most common, with some odd SUVs or sedans here and there. His clothes are not remarkable. He wears a Wildcats coat and jeans. Our big fear is that he will stir up trouble with the Ku Klux Klan here, who tend to show themselves more when strangers become unpopular. Just too much stress over this. We can chalk it up to diner talk, as all the people I mention here work there. But the attitude around him is not gossipy at all. Anyway, I plan to do a couple of strolls out in the hilly roads when I get some time off.
Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so very much for listening. I hope everyone has had a good week. I've got a killer headache right now. I don't even know why. Don't you just hate it when a headache springs up on you like that? I'm thinking of having a live stream soon, talking about some changes I'm going to make to the channel. Lots of changes, really. Yeah, just so many things are going to change. But we can talk about that on live once I've written out what those changes are going to be. I think I've got a good idea of what they are going to be now, but I want to, iron out the details. In any case, Papa's Scares link is on screen. I want to give him a huge thanks for joining me in today's video. He's an awesome narrator. You guys really should check him out. He's really, really good and a really lovely guy. Okay, go give it a click. Hopefully see you there. Stay awesome and see you in the next one.